welcome to the channel, folks. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You are always most welcome. Well, finally I've had my Spitfire ride. Third time lucky. Dreams do come true in the end. As you know, I'd had a few issues over the last 10 years. I've tried to have this event 3 times. I mean, obviously if I'd really been desperate to do it, I could have done it sooner in the last 10 years, but finally the planets aligned for me. Slightly strangely for me personally, because I didn't realise it straight away, but the day of the Spitfire ride, this is based at Blackpool, and this is with flyspitfire.com if you're interested in having a go yourself, which is the Biggin Hill Heritage Hangars Spitfire ride company, if you like. But it was a bit strange for me. I had rather bittersweet emotions about this, because it was the 11th, Saturday, the 11th of October was the day I had the ride, and that's the exact day, 17 years prior, that my mum died, Saturday, in Blackpool. So I had slightly mixed emotions about it, but if any of you have already watched the full video of the onboard footage, front and rear, it's definitely worth your time. If you've got any interest in Spitfires or Warbirds or anything like that, you should definitely watch the video. It's one of the best. I'm not saying mine's the best ever, it's certainly not, but it's one of the best where you get a bit of everything, you know. You get there's a bit of emotion there, there's some aerobatics, there's some fantastic scenery, a bit of sightseeing. You get to see me take the controls, which was absolutely amazing, I've got to say. I'm filming this now, and it's like 8 days later. I'm still buzzing, to be honest. I think my friends are getting a bit fed up with hearing about it now, and it's like, oh no, not this bloody Spitfire ride again. I've even got my Battle of Britain 85th anniversary badge on there, poppy badge. But yeah, it was an absolutely amazing experience, and I think you'll know how much I've enjoyed it when you watch the video. The only moment, I've had a few questions, so I thought I'd run through this and do a pilot's debrief, sir. Just give you have a full debriefing on the flight and how it went, how many bandits we shot down and all that kind of thing, you know. Here we've got my lovely Tamiya. I'm going to zoom in for this. This is, of course, the Tamiya Mk.VIII Spitfire. Now, it was actually a Mk.VIII, but very similar to this aircraft, converted Mk.VIII. Interesting history on that plane. In fact, I'm just going to get a shot for a second and talking behind the mic, because I have got a rather nice T-shirt, one of my souvenirs from the day that I got. This wasn't given to us; didn't have to be purchased. I got this very nice T-shirt, which I'm just going to briefly show you. I was going to wear it, but it's kind of awkward on camera, to be honest. I don't want to spoil it either with the jacket and everything. But there we are. So this is the aircraft, MT818, which was recently restored to actually at Kemble before it was moved to Biggin Hill. And it's been all over the world. It's spent some time in America. It's got the American-built Rolls-Royce Merlin, Packard-built, in fact, but the Rolls-Royce. Obviously the Rolls-Royce Merlin design, slightly different though. I can't remember exactly what the internal changes were, but they made it a bit more torquey and a bit more power at lower altitude, and I can certainly attest to that. It was very, very responsive indeed. And there's this very nice T-shirt which shows the aircraft in these American colours, which it was only painted in just a few months ago, about 6 months ago, and it's got the full spec on it. So I'll read you the full spec rather than you squint at the screen. So it's Merlin Packard 2-stage supercharger, 2-stage 2-speed supercharger. It's repeating itself slightly there, but it's the 266 version of the Packard Merlin. 1710 horsepower, that's 1275 kilowatts. Really powerful. At 6,400 feet. Now, I never went much above 3,000 feet. And yeah, it's got plenty of oomph. Maximum speed. And this is where we're going to get into the questions, I think. So I'll cover it as I go along here. Maximum speed, 404 miles per hour. We didn't go above about 295. I mean, they're never going to fly it flat out, because you're just putting wear on the engine you don't need to. At 21,000 feet maximum speed, wow. Combat range, 248 miles. 248 miles, so I can probably work out the miles per gallon, because I think it had a... I reckon it was doing about 8 miles to the gallon. I could be wrong. Service ceiling 35,000 feet. Number produced of the Mark-VIII, 5,656. Quite a lot. Now, don't forget Airfix. I've got their Mark-VIII, the Grey Nurse, and that's the other one that's the sister aircraft to this one in the Grey Nurse Squadron colours at Biggin Hill, which I thought I was going to fly. That was originally slated to be my aircraft. Makes no odds at all, really. And this aircraft was in service in June 1951. June 1951. Well, the aircraft was actually built in 1944, and it was as a Mark-VIII fighter, and it was converted at the end of the war by Vickers in 1945, and they converted it to a two-seater, so it was actually a proper Vickers conversion. So it wasn't one of these, you know, warbird restoration jobs. It was done at the factory, so that's quite impressive. And it says, and this is the interesting part, MT818 is unique as it's the only surviving prototype Spitfire of any mark flying in the world. It was the first and only Spitfire high-speed trainer prototype that was built in 1944, so this is the original trainer prototype. It's painted in the livery of 1942 Mark-IX Spitfire, Lady Ellen III, as flown by John Fawcett of the 309th Fighter Squadron of the 31st Fighter Group, assigned to the USAAF in November 1942. Now available as a two-seater aircraft operated by flyspitfire.com, so there you go. So it's pretty impressive, I think. Put that out on the arm so you can see it a little bit better. Isn't that nice? Very, very nice indeed. No, my lovely t-shirt. Oh, I didn't do the armament bit. Armament, 4 Browning machine guns 303. Didn't have cannon. Didn't have cannon, is that right? And there was no cannon on this aircraft, they were removed, but I thought they had cannon originally, not quite sure about that. 18 seconds firing time. If you watched my video about the cockpit, we talked about that. 18 seconds and you're out of rounds, so oops. Okay, so that's the t-shirt. So anyway, getting back to the flight. So I'll walk you through, well, I'm not going to go into blow by blow because you've seen the film. Just a few thoughts that I wasn't able to convey in the film, really. I have to say that many of you will have seen the pre-flight preparation training video. One of a number of them. I think there were 3 videos. The one that was about bailing out. I really had been. I know obviously I was hamming it up a bit for the camera, but I was a bit nervous. And to be quite honest with you, when you get into that aircraft and they strap you in, it's a lot tighter in the back than it is in the front. So it's a bit like an ME-109 or worse, and what you don't realise is the little door that flops down is tiny. It's not like the one at the front on the Mark-IX here. So I was going to zoom in and talk you through this. Good moment to do that. So if you look at the Mark-IX here, it's got the conventional traditional Spitfire door. And of course I asked the question about the breaker bar and whether it should be red or silver, but people still disagree about this, so I'm not going to go there. Anyway, it's got a decent sized door. Well, at the back, it's literally about 1/3 of the depth of that. It's absolutely tiny, the door that you have to... So what you have to do, you have to drop your seat down, eject the canopy, all while your aircraft's presumably sputtering or on fire, you know. And then you have to release the door, and then you have to, obviously before you do that, you release your seat belts, not the parachute. To quote the warden, not the wardens, no, not the parachute. Dad's army joke, but anyway. Don't release your parachute, yeah, if you're going to have to bail out. So you release the straps, which is easier said than done because you're in there really tight, and it's just the manoeuvre. I know I'm a little bit of a stocky sort of chap, average to stocky, but it's so tight. I mean, just manoeuvring to undo I can imagine that would be a challenge actually, having now sat in that seat. And then you've got to somehow get up and not get too high. You mustn't be sucked out at the top even when the canopy's gone, because you'll hit the tail and that will be fatal, literally. And this is where we come back to the story really, because as I'm strapping in the crew chief, I think his name's Tony, nice guy, very very good. And he said to me, now remember, if anything does go wrong, a very unlikely event that you have a problem, you have to bail out. God fucking thing. He said, remember what he said in the video. You must dive out just behind here. Zoom you in again. You've got to dive out. So imagine where my finger is now, as I zoom in. Where the aerial is. This is where I'm actually sitting on the 2-seater version. My actual position's about here. He said, make sure you dive out and dive down here. Dive down. Nothing else. Don't try and get out of the right side. Absolutely don't, because obviously there's no door there. You must dive down here. And he said, which made me laugh, he said, imagine you're diving into a swimming pool. Think of it like that. And I thought to myself, well, to be honest, the last time I dived into a swimming pool, it wasn't that recently, but it certainly wasn't spinning out of control, on fire. And I didn't have any restrictions on access of getting out or jumping into it anyway. Oh, God. But you got to be, I mean, it's really dangerous. It's really dangerous. I mean, we obviously presume that the pilot would try his best to be straight and level when you bail out, but it doesn't fill you with confidence, I've got to say. And once you're in that, you're thinking, well, I hope that nothing does happen, because I think, you know, you watch these videos and it's all like watching a play, isn't it? You know, oh, and you just sort of dive out like that. Oh, really? Yes. And obviously adrenaline will be pumping through you, which would probably help you to speed up. But it also makes you make mistakes, and you probably rush things too much and you get fouled in it. I just thought I'd get fouled in the doorway. I just can't imagine getting out of this quickly. But anyway, I thought I'd share that with you. It's quite funny. Anyway, the next thing was we have to taxi out. Now, Blackpool's got this incredibly long taxi, to be honest. It's quite a long runway, although it's a very bumpy one, which was another issue. That was nightmarish. And the pilot warned me, he said, it's quite bumpy. He said, you'll notice it at takeoff and landing. It was worse at takeoff, because it was like the plane was rocking. You're thinking, oh my God. It's like being on grass, really. It was no better than being on grass. So it's no wonder that they don't really use it for commercial flights anymore for airlines. They used to have Jet 2 at Blackpool. I think it's all long since over now, but I did read somewhere that they weren't that happy about the runway, and I can see why. I mean, the Spitfire is a little bit tricky at the best of times, you know, type of, you know, tricycle tail sitter that it is, with a relatively narrow track, and it makes it a little bit tricky. But anyway, we got down to the end of the runway. We turned around. This is where the film starts really in earnest, and me sort of grimacing, you know. But I had complete confidence in the pilot. I'd already had I didn't just, despite the way the video plays, I didn't just meet him there and then. He met you beforehand and explained a few things to you. And obviously we sat and had to go through all the procedures. So they strap you in. As I say, we get down to the end of the runway, all ready to go. And he said, are you sure? We're good to go? Yes, good to go. And off we go. And then we hit this bumpy, very tricky runway, which is very unsettling. And you can see it in the video, it is unnerving. And I was, if I said to you that I was up for this, that would be an understatement. So there was never a danger I was going to be sick, and there was never a danger I was going to chicken out or any of that stuff. Absolutely no chance any of that. Even if I thought something bad might happen, I probably still wouldn't chicken out, because I just think, what a way to go. You know? Anyway, here's the thing. So he tears down the runway, and he has a very smooth flying style, this chap, a gentleman called John Cook. By the way, I've got photos of him, but I'm not allowed to show them. They didn't want to show us pictures, he said. It's the company's policy, they don't show the pilots, okay. But very professional guy, very friendly, you know, and he actually is an airline pilot on his day job, would you believe? So this is like a hobby at the weekend, a bit of overtime, you might say. But we get to the end of the runway, and he was very, you know, very deliberate about everything. And as I mentioned in the video, the wheels come up and you don't hear them, you don't feel them. It's not like on an airliner where there's a big clunk, you know. They were super smooth, you know. If there was the green light in front that told you the gear was up, if that wasn't there, I would have had no idea when the gear came up, because there was no sensation at all. So he's then flying along with the gear up, climbing almost 1%, very gently, just climbing like this. And then he gets to the end of the runway, which is where it goes across the main road. The flight path, I mean. Not the runway itself. And there's like a new housing estate, and then you've got the dunes. You're just approaching Lytham St Anne's. And without warning, and this really scared me, and I'll explain why. It's not the reason you may think. He pulls back on the stick and pulls into a hard left bank, a really hard left, 90-degree almost bank. Out of nowhere. And then I was thinking, this is going to be a very smooth, you know, walk in the park. And the G-force, and it's not really apparent in the video. So one thing the video can't convey to you is the effect of the G's, really. But the G-force at that moment was the strongest I experienced in the entire flight, actually. It wasn't as bad during the aerobatics. And I think it was because he just went into this, from being straight level, into it. And the thing that made me afraid wasn't the G, it wasn't the turn, it wasn't the climb, and it wasn't the fact that I wasn't expecting it. It was the speed, which I thought was really low, and I was looking down. Now, as it turned out, I just want to put anybody's fears that might be going on one of these flights, put your mind to rest. My perception was incorrect, but at the time, I hadn't quite got used to looking at all the instruments and what they all worked. They didn't actually talk me through. That's the only tiny criticism when they asked for feedback. I must feed that back. They didn't actually go through the instruments, and it would have been helpful to have had that actually in advance if they put it on like a sheet, because they weren't exactly the same as the front. Most of them were, but some of them were different, and it was a little bit, you're unsure what's in front of you. You know, there's so much going on. Your brain is racing. You know, you're listening to the pilot, and that was the other one. I'm just going to get this out of the way at the beginning. The other one thing that wasn't that great, the quality of the headset radio communications were garbled at best, very loud, but very garbled. I can hear air traffic control. I can hear him talking to them. And it wasn't always apparent when he was talking to me. No fault of his, I don't think. I think it's really more the radio set. You know, the actual... They need to probably upgrade, because I have seen other warbird experience companies that have got much clearer radio communication, and that they record it within the video as well, which we didn't have. So that's the one area where they can improve. Everything else was absolutely fantastic. Anyway, getting back to the point, he pulls into this extreme. This is where I said, oof, best to have your lunch a bit later in the day sort of thing. And the thing was, I thought he was doing 140 mile an hour, and I just had this moment of panic, actually, because I thought that probably isn't fast enough to pull such a high G turn. And you could see he loses 50 miles an hour in almost the blink of an eye. It really just almost stops dead, the aircraft, as it comes over the beach, off the Blackpool beach at the end. It's almost at Lytham. And it backs over, and you look down, you can see the sand dunes and the beach, and you can see the motion, the forward motion almost drops to nothing. And I was thinking, oh my God, we're going to end up on the beach, you know. However, when I watched the video back, and you can see this yourselves, if you watch it closely, it's actually a bit fast. I looked down at that point, but he's already scrubbed off most of the speed, and it was 140. But when he started the manoeuvre, it was 180, 185, I think. So actually, it was fine, you know. It just put the willies on me. I never had another moment in the entire flight where I felt nervous at all, actually. Genuinely, but I did then. It was like, whoa, no. And I've been watching too many of these, you know, Blanca Lirio and all these other channels that dissect air crashes in great detail. Probably watching too many of those. Ironically, there was one on that I watched just before I went off that morning when I woke up. Probably wasn't wise, but anyway. I digress. Anyway, so it was okay, and now I look back, I'm thinking, yeah, he knew what he was doing, it was fine. It was just the perception I had in that moment. I thought, we're not going to make it, we're going to drop out of the sky, it's going to stall, yeah. But again, the Spitfire, overall, you know, it's a very forgiving aircraft. I was quite surprised how easy it was to fly when I took the controls. We'll get into that in a minute anyway. But more questions that some of you have asked, I'm going to just try and address them. Just after we levelled out, about a minute after we levelled out, and then we started to gently turn northeast, he says to me on the radio, he said, Peter, do you see that 109 go flying past us on the right at 3 o'clock? And I was like, no. Now, I didn't have, these are my best glasses that I'm wearing right now. I deliberately didn't want, because we'd had this problem, some of you know, that I had a problem with these. This is the second set of frames. The first set delaminated and got broken. And I didn't want to wear these, so I wore my slightly older frames, titanium ones, which are nice glasses actually. And very good for the, you know, the instruments. Not quite as good though for very far distance. Still good, you know, better than most people's eyesight probably, but not quite as good as the ones I'm wearing at this moment. Now, whether I would have spotted this 109, he said after it was a Cessna, a light aircraft that went flashing by. And there was a couple of light aircraft, we'll get into that in a second, a couple of light aircraft on the route that were, one was on radar, with a flight plan, and one wasn't, and this is the problem that you come up against. But anyway, I never saw this, and I said, did you see it? And I thought, I'm not going to lie to you. I said, do you know what? I said, your eyes, I said, maybe I've got the wrong glasses on, but I didn't see it. I've got to be honest, I didn't see that. And then there was a second one which I didn't see. I did see, there's three that we encountered. I saw the third one, which was much later in the flight over over the File coast further up. But it just shows you've got to have your eyes on stalks, and as is mentioned in the video, you're flying in uncontrolled airspace. Yeah, you're flying below the airlines, and these guys don't have to have legally. They don't have to have a flight plan if they're just pleasure flyers from Blackpool. But it's see and avoid. It's VFR. It's really tricky. I think it's that's the only thing that made me nervous through the rest of the flight was that, because this 109 right at the beginning of the flight, and I was thinking, oh my god, and it was cloudy, which made it worse. If it had been a clear sunny day, you've got a better chance of spotting things, also reflection. But because it was cloudy, this was not the greatest conditions for VFR, And as you saw, the clouds were about 1,800 feet to 1,900 feet, I think. So we ended up climbing above them 2,000 feet for some of the transition time. But anyway, so there you go. So that was the first enemy bandit at 3 o'clock. Moving along a bit, I was asked the question, I think it was Aubrey that asked me the question about the engine and said, do you smell it in the cockpit? Well, that's a good question actually, because I was quite surprised. When it fires up and all the flames come out of the exhaust, you do smell it, yeah, absolutely. But that's only because the props only just started turning. Once the engine's running, you never smell it again, really, because the sheer power of that fan from that propeller, it just blasts it away. You never smell anything. And the aerodynamics actually do push it down as well, so you don't really get it in the cockpit at all. The only time I smelt it again was probably when we switched the engine off for a moment. So I was quite pleasantly surprised by that. And it was strange. I was a little bit underdressed in some respects. I wasn't sure. I didn't want to be sweaty and hot and sweaty up in the cockpit. So I only wore a shirt, just similar to the one I've got on now. I didn't wear a coat. Other people had coats on because it was quite a cold day. When we got there, I was actually starting to shiver and think I should go to the car and get my jacket out. But when I put on the actual flying suit and on the flameproof RAF style flying suit, it was fine. I didn't feel cold. In the cockpit, I never felt hot or cold. I didn't sweat. There's quite a lot of fresh air comes in. Yeah, it was actually quite a comfortable experience. It was much more comfortable than I expected. The other question I was asked about was the noise. How noisy is the Merlin? Well, I think it's pretty noisy. However, these headphones, which I moaned about, they've got, I think they're noise cancelling headphones, and it certainly cut it down a lot. And I could tell this right at the end, because when there's a funny moment if you watch the video again, right at the end, where the chap comes to open the canopy and he says, just stay where you are, sir. I'm just going to get your cameras out and then we'll bring your family or your wife over, And he said, and I said to him, should I put the seat down? Because I was told in the briefing video that's what you should do. You should only have the seat up when you're in flight. As soon as the engine's off, you should put it down. And he said, no, you can leave it as you are. Well, he said it in a bit of a softer voice. I never heard a word of that. And I just it's quite funny because I go, chunk, and drop the seat down. And he probably thought, you ignorant. So I think he knew though, because he said to my wife after, there was a footage she took, she says, have you got any words? What's your first feelings of your experience? And I was like, and I thought, I could see her lips are moving, but I had no idea what she's saying. I also had a lot of buzzing in this. Anyway, I'll come back to that at the end. I'll do the end later. So, another question I was asked was, there's a couple of moments that were actually quite funny, which is not really apparent in the video as such, and that is, you see me suddenly take my hands, so he hands control to me as we fly over Lancaster, and I take control of a World War II Spitfire and actually flew this aircraft. Now, I think Aubrey or somebody else was asking me about the rudder. Did you use the rudder? No, you don't use the rudder at those sort of speeds anyway. Rudder, you tend to use the rudder more for low speed manoeuvring, takeoff, landing and all that kind of thing, or if there's a strong headwind or something like that. I don't think the pilot was using a lot of rudder himself, so I didn't use the rudder. No, I didn't need to. I mean, I was flying at 200 miles an hour, about 2,000 feet. I think 2,200 or something like that. So I didn't use the rudder, but there's a moment there where you'll have seen that he sort of told me off. He didn't tell me off like that, but he just said, oh, Peter, because he's looking down once I've got control. He's looking very carefully at the stick. He's ready to grab it in an emergency, but he's looking at how the stick's moving and what I'm doing with it. And he said, oh, you're very smooth with the stick, that's really good. He said, but you're putting up elevator, as you're turning, You're putting up elevator in. And I said, yeah, well, I have to do that with my radio-controlled jets, because if I don't, they just drop out of the sky. I mean, they just almost stall. You know, if I do a turn, some of them are not always turning at high speed. Any medium speed turn, it just sheds altitude instantly. And he said, oh, right. He said, well, that's probably because they're relatively high wing loading. He said, you don't have to worry about that here. We're fine. And at that moment, I took my hands off. You see it again. Oh, and I take my hands off because I thought he'd taken back control, and he actually hadn't. I assumed it, and then I realised I put my hands back on the stick. Now, we were pretty much straight level at the time. It wasn't a problem. And to be honest, the Spit actually just beautiful to fly. It just kind of slightly self-corrected itself. It's just brilliant, the balance, you know. Absolutely superb, the trim. And then I realised, and I don't know whether he knows that, he probably, when he watches this video, when he watched the other one, he probably realised, because I took my hands off and then instantly thought, oh no, he hasn't got control, quick, you're still flying the aircraft. Now, of course, I wasn't doing anything violent, but I mean, when I was just after leaving Lancaster, heading towards sort of Silverdale, Arnside, up there, Morecambe Bay, the coast, I was sort of scooning the plane, fairly gently, of course, because I wouldn't do anything crazy unless I just don't, you know. People have got to understand something. This is not a movie. It's not a video game. It's not a simulator. This is the real thing, and you don't want to screw this up because your own life depends on it anyway. So do everything very, very smoothly. But he said, oh yeah, you're very smooth. He said, and it's a very smooth aircraft, isn't it? And I said, yeah. I said, I never imagined it would be this easy. You know, you can just have it just floating back and forth like this. It was just effortless, amazingly light. Just like driving the Porsche or anything else, you know. It wasn't, I thought it would be like a real, I thought you really have to take it by the scruff of the neck, but not at all. It was an absolute pleasure. Anyway, so we got onto that. And then the other thing that I noticed, which was quite strange, was I mentioned earlier about the G-force that I felt on that first extreme turn. When you're doing the rolls, though, you don't really feel any G-force because, of course, centrifugal force, G-force stroke centrifugal force of the roll holds you in. But my wife was saying, do you not feel weightless when you went upside down? I said, but you don't, because, excuse me, you don't feel weightless because centrifugal force adds G-force. Not a lot of it though, nothing like that turn. It was probably about 1.5, 2 Gs or something, 2 Gs, two. Don't really notice it at all because you're only inverted momentarily. You certainly don't feel weightless. The only time I did feel weightless actually was when I was flying, going back to my flying across Arnside, heading into the bay, because I climbed up a bit, and he said, just ease through this because you probably saw it's very thin, wispy cloud layer that we flew through. And he said, yeah, just push through this, and then level off. And I just gently pushed it forward, perhaps a little bit too much though, too much push forward, and so it just apogeed a bit, and then you could feel this weightless feeling. That was the one time I experienced it. And he said, yeah, that's okay. Don't worry. He said, we'll just level out automatically. It's fine. He said, you don't need to overcorrect it. So I just eased off and went a bit leveler then, you know. And then we did a bit of turning over the bay. And then once we got to Grange Eversands, as you probably saw, then you're into the Lake District, and he took over because obviously suddenly you've got terrain that's at the height we'd been flying at, so you've got to be very careful, you know. And he went higher. He went up to about 3,000 feet. He started off at 2. You see the cloud was at about 1,900 feet. You can see it very clearly. And this was the most amazing part of the flight for me, actually, apart from the stunts and the flying myself, was this feeling I had when we started towards Newby Bridge at the start of Lake Windermere. And you looked across to the sort of northwest, and you could see the mountains, Helvellyn, and you could see Scafell Pike. And it was just, they were just poking through this layer of cloud. Now, it's not really shown on the video because the angle's wrong, because you're actually not, the camera isn't quite pointing at it. But when it was side on, it was like something from Lord of the Rings. It was really weird. It was like Mordor, you know? And it was almost felt like I was in a dream. It was the most bizarre, surreal feeling. Really good, actually. Really enjoyed it because the sun was out, the blue sky above, you've got the mountain tops peeking through this white band of cloud, and then below it was clear again. And then we flew up Windermere. And then I mentioned, if you don't know it, you wouldn't probably appreciate some of the things I was saying in the captions, but Langdale Chase, of course, was the hotel my wife and I stayed at for my birthday when we had the aborted Spitfire ride at the end of it. Of because of the weather, unfortunately. But Langdale Chase, as it turns out, which is almost like a castle, big house, hotel now, is actually where we turned. We flew directly over it and started banking over Langdale Chase. That's actually where we started the bank to turn back, if you like, start to do a loop back, and then he headed southwest over the fells where Tarnhouse is, which was beautiful, the sun reflecting off it, you know, and then over Coniston, and this is where I did the short trailer the other day with the Windmills of Your Mind background music, which got demonetized. Of course, I knew that would happen anyway. I didn't care. I just wanted to plant that seed in people's mind, because as you are heading into the sun now, you've got this windmilling effect, because obviously the frame rate of the camera is much higher than the prop, or rather not higher than, but slows down the effect of the prop, so it makes the prop look like a windmill. This is what came in my mind live, you know. I thought, oh, it just reminds me of that tune, Windmills of Your Mind. And you could see that effect, and when the sun was glistening on it, it was then the shadow of the windmilling prop on the actual top of the wing. Fantastic, fantastic. And then we got out, headed out of the Lake District, heading back over Morecambe Bay, and he gave me back control, the same sort of airspace, going the opposite direction this time. And that was really cool, because there was this layer of cloud at about 1,800 feet. And I was banking over the bay and turning in there and cutting through the cloud layer and then back again, you know. Absolutely amazing. Great fun. I said to somebody, a friend of mine, I said, this is the most fun I've ever had with my clothes on, yeah. Absolutely brilliant. Anyway, go back to the questions. Then we head, of course, down towards, I'm thinking, as I said in the video, I thought, oh well, we're just going to have a pleasure flight now. No, that's wrong. You're not going to have a pleasure flight. He's going to show you the true nature of the Force. He's going to show you what the Spitfire can really do. And so we end up, he's chosen this spot, which is quite sensible actually, over the North Fylde farmland area around Great Eccleston and Pleasall, Stallmine, Pilling, that area. And he starts doing these aerobatics, you know, and it's like, oh Lord. And that's when I was almost laughing, trying not to chuckle really, because it was brilliant, you know. I mean, he only did left, I don't know this is normal, it's a procedure they all follow, but he only did left-hand victory rolls. But he did nose over banking, high G banking turn, about 100 degrees, proper high angle of attack, sharp banking, you know. 100 degrees, I mean, the Earth was up here like this, or up here like this. It was like, whoa. But again, I didn't really feel any G-force or weightlessness or anything like that. Maybe a little, but nothing you could mention. And but again, going back to my original comment about the scary first manoeuvre when he took off at Blackpool, he was doing 180 miles an hour. Well, he was doing these other manoeuvres at 290 miles an hour. Which is what I kind of expected, you know, which is why I wasn't remotely concerned, because I thought, yeah, this is clearly within the envelope of the aircraft. And as I say, it could actually go to 400. A couple of interesting points though. I don't know if anybody else has got experience, if any of you viewers have been on one of these flights. One thing that struck me slightly odd was that in the back seat, you've got the speedo in miles per hour, and normally it's in knots. I'm pretty sure it's in knots in the front. I guess that's just for the fact that we're all Joe Public, and we probably wouldn't understand what knots was without having to do the calculation, you know. I think it's actually put there to make it easy to understand for the public. So he was basically never going above 300 miles an hour the whole flight. But these manoeuvres were just brilliant, and he was doing it over, I was thinking, oh, why are you doing it here, sort of thing. I thought, I know he's doing it here, if anything goes wrong, splat, we're only going to land in some farmland and not take out a village or a town. Well, then we headed over to the Fylde coast, and then I had my little emotional moment because, of course, as I mentioned, it was the anniversary of my mum dying, even the same day, Saturday. And we did this fantastic circuit of Fleetwood. And I mentioned very briefly in the video that the night we buried my dad and my mum, sad story this obviously, mum and dad, they died just 5 weeks apart. And the night my dad died was the night that Fleetwood Pier burned down. And some of the mourners who were at the wake said, oh, come on, we're all going to go on the pier. And I just wasn't up for it, I'm afraid. And I didn't go, and I really regret it now, because that was it. That was the last day of Fleetwood Pier, in fact. So that was a bit sad, and it just doesn't look the same without it. It looks weird to me, Fleetwood. I don't sort of recognise it like I used to. However, that said, it does look very different from the air as well. It's much more of a round peninsula, like a curved peninsula. You don't really notice that the same when you're on the ground. It's yes, you know there's a bit of a curve to it, but not as much as it actually is. And of course, you go down the front, and then you pass the boating lakes, and then you come to the golf course, which is where the cemetery is next to it. So I was telling the pilot, and he knew about this. I'd already requested. What you saw on this flight was my request. I got the impression from what he was saying though that he did the same with everybody else, because I think he thought it was quite a good flight plan, you know. And he went the exact kind of route I thought he might as well, funnily enough. I said to my wife, she said that's exactly what you said was going to happen last night. Even the route, you know, via Morecambe and Arnside. I said, yeah, I think so. But obviously it's a low traffic area. So I got that right anyway. But then he said, yeah, we'll do another circuit, you know, for your mum and dad sort of thing. So let's, yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So we went round again, and this time sort of really tipped almost like in a salute at the end. And then we shot down the seafront. Thornton Cleveley's down the seafront, 225 miles an hour. And then, of course, the last big manoeuvre was when we got to Blackpool Tower. And he gets to Blackpool Tower, where the central pier is, and then he does this massive bank over. Now, I actually got this, I'm so impressed by this. I've now got that photograph of me looking across. This is going to go off again, just bear with me. Here we go. This is become one of my favourite photos from with the North Pier below me. Try again. North Pier just below, you can see. That's one of my favourite photos of the whole flight, actually. That and the ones where I'm upside down, which I think many of you will have seen that already. So it was an amazing experience, you know. And then this business about on the final approach into Blackpool, or Squires Gate as it used to be called, was again the undercarriage goes down, and you would never know it. It's just so smooth and quiet. It's incredible. Maybe he can feel it more than I can, because I'm a bit aft of the centre of gravity in the passenger seat. Oh, I did just mention in my notes here as well. Blackpool Tower looked awfully rusty. I got to say, doesn't it? It needs a paint. Anyway, yeah, finally, and then you get the final thing that really struck me about the flight. Really was as he puts the flaps down. Nothing from the undercarriage. The minute he puts the flaps down, it's like you hit a brick wall. You can actually see in the video if you watch it closely, or if you slow it down, the nose goes and dips noticeably, because they are like a 90-degree flap, aren't they? I don't know if you saw it on this. Same on this aircraft here. They are quite an extreme flap on the Spitfire. Just basically a 90-degree flap. And it's definitely worth pointing out to you. Where the invasion bars are there. It's worth pointing out to you the flap actuator doors, which you see very well from my position, which is like that angle when I'm flying, and you see them pop up, and the actuator arm comes up. See on the other side as well, there they are, and it's really graphic. You see that pop up, and bang, you hit. These flaps come down, and boy, do you feel it! You really do feel it, and you're thinking, "Cool, that's quite an air brake, you know." Quite impressive. And then you get ready for landing, and on the bumpy runway again, which was a bit again. And then you're hitting it this time at, I don't know, about 115, 120 miles an hour, something like that. But it was great. It was absolutely fantastic. I can certainly recommend it to anybody. I wouldn't hesitate. Have a clear idea what you want to do if you do go on one of these flights, and ask them, share it with them, and say, could you do this? I mean, mine originally I was going to fly from Biggin Hill and go to the White Cliffs of Dover, which was quite expensive. This was no cheaper. This was the same price, but it was better for me. Although the White Cliffs of Dover is very emotive, but you're only going to be over there for 2 or 3 minutes, probably 5 minutes at most. And for me personally, because I'm not from that part of the world, the journey, the transit there and back, it wouldn't mean anything to me. It would be meaningless. Whereas this was really a way of enjoying this Spitfire ride, and lots of memories of my earlier life. My parents, obviously, that are gone and in the cemetery at Fleetwood. That was very emotive. I think I did quite well to keep myself together. I think the adrenaline kept me going there. I didn't sort of start blubbing or anything. But again, the Lake District. I've got a lot of connections with the Lake District. I've lived up there, and I've been a huge fan of the Lake District for years, and to see all these places from this height on such a beautiful day, it was quite magical, really. It was quite magical. So there we go. So that's the Spitfire debrief. Really, was there anything else? Oh yeah, I mentioned about, I'd say what happened at the end. Very funny when the chap, I can't remember his name. It may have been Adam, who opened the canopy, and he said, mentions about it. I said, oh, should I put my seat down? He said, no, you can leave it as it is, and I immediately pop it down because I didn't hear a word he said. And talking of popping, my ears were really popping, which surprised me because we'd only been 3,000 feet. And I said to the pilot, I said, oh, my ears are popping when I took my helmet off, you know. And he said, oh, that's quite normal. He said, because the high G turns really, although we're only at 2,000 feet when we're doing he said the G makes it like 5,000-6,000 feet effect on your, on your ears and your sinuses. He said, I think you'll find it goes really quickly there. And he was right. Within about 2 minutes, it just suddenly cleared up and was back to normal. Whereas on airlines in the past, it can take an hour or two before my ears go completely normal, So it's soon gone, but I couldn't hear anything because I had this headset on, and I had my ears popping as well. It was like, ugh. Anyway, it's soon gone. And then finally, took some photographs. You saw the picture of me stubbing my arm on the aircraft. And as I say, there's a picture with the pilot, which I can't share with you, but nice guy, fantastic pilot, very professional, really enjoyed it. A great experience, what can I say? So I recommend it to you, but it's not something you do every weekend. It's a bit pricey. You can buy a lot of air-fixed Spitfires for the price of that ride, I can tell you. Anyway, there we go. So that's the debrief. It's really interesting though. I mean, I'm never going to look at them in quite the same way again, the Spitfire, because having been on it, it completely changes your perception. You notice that during the manoeuvres, the deflection of the ailerons, it's very small actually. They don't move a lot apart from when you do a victory roll. It's the only time you really notice them moving. A very extreme manoeuvre, By the way, somebody has, just this morning before I filmed this video, somebody has put lots of photographs of my flight on Facebook, taken from around the airport, and there's great shots of me taking off, taxiing and taking off. Clearly see it's me, and flying low over the runway I mentioned with the wheels up, and then there's a really good shot of it above the Big Dipper at the Pleasure Beach. I don't know what they call it now, the big one, is it? And it's my Spitfire is flying above that and then pitching over into this high G climb I mentioned, which really sort of intimidated me at the beginning. And then there's another shot taken by somebody later over Silverdale. I think he took it the big zoom lens, a big telephoto lens. And this, of course, is when I was flying. So I'll have to share those with you in the near future. Perhaps not just now. I think you've probably had enough Spitfires from me for now. But I might do a montage and show all this stuff with video and the stills. Some really good professional photographs, actually. And real fine for me to see that. And people saying, oh, isn't it beautiful? And everybody coming out saying, what a beautiful sight to see this Spitfire that I was on. So it's quite a nice feeling, really. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed it. I did my best. I have to say to you that the footage that is taken on board is very good with a GoPro, but I ended up with something like a total of, with that footage and the footage from my wife and the stills, there was about 30 bits of footage, of which 16 had to be stitched together for the big movie, the 50-minute movie. Stitching this stuff together though and synchronising it so that you're looking at front and rear view when the head moves, it's got to be synchronised correctly, and it isn't easy. Now I'm sure someone who's a real IT genius could probably do it quicker than I did. I spent 5 days on that video. I'm not exaggerating. 5 full working days is how long it took me to produce that. And the other one, the Windmills of Your Mind as well. So to produce them all together, there was 3, wasn't there? There was the one where I showed it taking off and landing. Those three videos, if you like, took a full week's work. A full working week. That's how long it was. So much effort. I was absolutely exhausted. I was working until 2 or 3 o'clock, still dressed in my dressing gown because I was so engrossed in it. I hadn't even got round to having my lunch or having a shower. Disgusting. Anyway, all sorted now, all done. So that's me starting to calm down now, coming off cloud 9. But as I said, I did call it a walk in the clouds, and especially when I went to the Lake District, it was like something very surreal, like something from a movie, the impression I It's a shame that there wasn't a camera on the other side, because that would have captured quite a lot more of the lake's grassmere and places like that, you know. But you can't have everything, I suppose. And what we did get was amazing. It was amazing. But that feeling when you're just banking and climbing gently in and out of cloud, blue sky above you, and these wisps of cloud, it's almost dreamlike, like a dream sequence, really. Quite amazing. Anyway, that's me and the Spitfire debrief. I think that's everything. I'm sure somebody will no doubt ask another question that I haven't thought of. Or now that I've recorded it, I should say. It was certainly a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I would certainly recommend it to anybody, as long as you're not a nervous flyer, you know. Obviously that wouldn't be for you, but I think you have to be a little bit fatalistic about it. Not sure I'd do it if I was 21 or 25. It is dangerous, you know, compared to flying on an airline. It's not the same as that at all. There's a lot of risks involved. But these guys are professionals, and they maintain these aircraft better than they were probably maintaining the Battle of Britain, to be honest, because they didn't have time to maintain them then. These things, this is why they rotate the aircraft. You know, they moved from the Grey Nurse Squadron version, rotated over to this one to give that a rest, have a bit of maintenance. And I think that's it for the season, in fact. I don't think they've got any more days allocated until next spring. But if you've got a big birthday coming up, or some, you know, amazing celebration, I would certainly consider it if that's what floats your boat and you'd like to go and fly in a World War II warbird. I can strongly recommend it to you. Anyway, thank you for all the support I've had from everybody. I have to be honest with you, I'm having some issues with YouTube. Not unique to me. Not unique to me at all. I think many people are having issues with YouTube at the moment. To do with this algorithm AI thing they've set up, which is just turned into the biggest load of nonsense I've ever seen. What do I mean? I mean that, just forget my channel for a second. Think of me as a viewer like yourself. I'm getting offered such a load of pap that is not the stuff I'm asking to see. You know, I want to see Harry's Garage or Phil Flory or, you know, whatever it happens to be, Night Shift. And I'm being offered stupid videos from 9 years ago that I've seen again and again and again. And they're even offering me multiple, on the same page, my own videos from 5 years ago. And it's like, what do I want to watch my own video from 5 years ago for? Or from last week for? What are you offering me that for? It's gone. It's not artificial intelligence. It's artificial unintelligence. It's amazing. I don't know what's happened. Apparently somebody said... there's a lot of split opinions about this, by the way. Most of the opinions that will disagree with me, due respect to everybody, but probably not quite up to speed with what's happened recently. Because something changed between May and August, they reckon, and this new algorithm. And as I said to you, there was a video on YouTube where they had a guy trying to explain it from YouTube, and he couldn't explain any of it. He didn't have a clue what was going on. It was quite obvious. So it's like the machines have taken over, worryingly. And the upshot, the reason I'm bellyaching about it, is my views have plummeted. The feedback is from you, the viewers, is brilliant. I'm getting such positive feedback from everybody. So it's not the content. The reason the views are plummeting is they're not being offered. They're offering you my stuff from 10 years ago or whatever. What are they doing this for? This is baffling. And it's the same for me. You know, I'm getting offered Harry's Garage videos from 8 years ago. Why? And it offers one or, you know, more than one of them on the same suggestions page. It's like, go away. I don't want this old stuff. I've seen all that again and again. There's one video I've seen 9 times. Why? Why is it doing this? Just offer me his new stuff. And this is what's happening. Quite a few of you have had problems with notifications. You've got notifications on, and it's very important that you do not ding personalised notifications. It's a complete lie, that is. That's the worst. That word, personalised, makes it sound like that's going to be really focused on what you want. No, it isn't. It's the exact opposite. Worst lie since still love you in the morning, or the check's in the post, I promise. Complete rubbish. Personalised, what they actually do is, or the algorithm, decides what it thinks, for whatever reasons, what it thinks you will want to watch, not necessarily based on what you do actually watch. So we've got a problem with this, and I'm having a bit of a rant now. Well, the simple reason is that it's affecting my channel quite badly, I've got to be honest. And not only is the new channel not growing at the rate I'd hoped, excuse me, pardon me, it is growing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining about viewers here. It's just not being offered to people. People that are seeing it are subscribing, but there aren't enough people get to see it in the first place. It's like a restaurant without a menu, YouTube. Well, what's on the menu? Well, we're just going to give you a meal. That's what they're doing. They're taking away your control and your choice. It's like Big Brother. And it's affecting me as a viewer, it's affecting me as a channel, my views are down, my quality's not down. I don't think there's much more I can do now. I've just flown a bloody World War II Spitfire. Everybody's got to see that without a paywall for free and put you in the seat of the pilot. I don't think that there's much more I can do, and to see the pathetic level of views because it's not being promoted, and it's nothing to do with thumbnails or this or that. We've tried all sorts, and I'm seeing other people moaning about this who are normally incredibly successful. There is a problem at YouTube, being no doubt at all, and it's frustrating me a lot, and I am starting to question what the future is really. And I'm not trying to get clicks. I'm not going to put some clickbaity title on saying I'm leaving YouTube, but I am starting to question my future with YouTube because it's just not delivering for me. What did I say? I just spent 5 working days on a video that's only had a couple of hundred views. That is not sustainable at all. I noticed somebody had done a Matchbox Panzer III build, 35,000 views, something that's just got the camera on when he's making a model. Did it well, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking this video at all. But something is wrong. That's not a new video though. It's something new that's gone wrong. Something in the last 4 to 6 months has gone badly out of kilter at YouTube, and it's affecting a lot of creators, including me. So, I've got to be honest, unless things improve, I'm going to come. I think we'll just carry on till the end of the year, but then I'm going to take a view of it next year, and there could be some major changes. It has got to deliver more for me. I am not a public service, free public service broadcasting. Part of this is a hobby, but I expect to return on it as well. Don't expect to be a millionaire. I don't expect to be able to fund my Porsche and its tax and insurance and all that, which is coming up. Oh, that's another story. I don't expect that, but I do expect at least some pocket money out of it, and I'm getting almost jack at the moment, and it's just not sustainable at all. So I'll be reviewing the future. But anyway, don't want to end on a downer after such a magnificent, mesmerising and unforgettable and surreal experience that I had with the Spitfire. I commend it to you if you get the chance. Somebody said to me yesterday, asked me about how much it cost, and I was like, well, I won't quote that now because my wife paid for it. I'm not going to say it was a lot. And this person looked me in the eye and he said, which would you remember most on your deathbed? That money in your bank or that day you flew the Spitfire? And I thought, yeah, he's right, isn't he? He's absolutely right. You can't take it with you, folks. That isn't me recommending you go out and blow crazy money on things you can't afford. But if you have got the ability, or you can persuade your better half or a relative to fund it or whatever, life is short. And you should make the most of it. And you just can't. It's hard to exaggerate the pleasure that has brought me, and those photographs and the memories and the video. If I'm ever feeling a bit down, I'm probably going to put that video on. It's going to cheer me up every time. I know it is. You can see the joy on my face, completely genuine. Somebody said you're either smiling or you're about to throw up, and I thought. I didn't say anything in response, but I can assure you I was nowhere near thrown up. I was very sensible. I had my lunch afterwards and had nothing to eat substantially for about 3 or 4 hours. It was never going to happen. I was a bit nervous at that first turn there, but it wasn't going to result in me throwing up. It might have resulted in me sort of covering my eyes a bit though. Anyway, there we go. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you'll give us a I hope you give us a thumbs up, a 10 out of 10. I hope you enjoyed these videos. Something we don't get every day, and obviously one of us, so to speak, in the sort of modelling community. I was particularly impressed by the Blackpool Spitfire Museum, and I've thanked them in writing, and I've also sent them the links to all the videos, especially Keith, thanking Keith because he did the cockpit show round, which is invaluable. I mean, that is a brilliant resource for modellers. And it was just look. I'm not going to take the credit for this really because I just looked into that one. I just walked up, started taking pictures. You could tell because I was in the flying suit that I was one of the Spitfire flyers. And he came up and just offered to give me the guide instantly on the spot, and it was gold, I think. And again, that video, that should get a lot more views than it's got. It should get thousands of views. It deserves it for the effort he put in. Never mind me just standing there with a camera. And this is what frustrates me. I don't think we're getting our due desserts, but there we go. But wasn't that nice? So I recommend that museum to you. I think they charged to get in, and we didn't have to pay because obviously I'd already paid, thank you. Eye-watering about. But I think they charge, I can't remember, £6 or £10 to get in, but it's no more than £10, I don't think. And there's a lot of stuff to see there. And if you go in flying season, sort of May to October, I think it is, then you might get to see Spitfire, especially on a Saturday. Definitely worth the visit. But even of its own accord, if you go to the illuminations next Saturday, drop in there late afternoon, go and see that, and get yourself some fish and chips, and then go and see the lights at Blackpool. What a lovely evening out, like we all used to have when we were younger, Anyway, there you go, folks. Thank you very much for joining me. Plenty more interesting stuff coming up on the channel. Got some very interesting reviews to show you. Something very chunky and very nice kit, a jet, Cold War jet that I'm going to show you. I think you're going to enjoy that. And until next time, thanks for all your support. Thanks for all the kind comments and the sort of joy I think that video has brought to people, just to see what it's like to be in a Spitfire from the passenger seat, stroke pilot seat. I did get my certificate. I think you've seen it already. Got a certificate saying you have flown a Spitfire, and it calls you the second pilot, not the passenger. Hi folks, Squadron Leader Oxley reporting for duty. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me. Once again, you are always most welcome. I'm still buzzing like a 5-year-old child that's had too much sugar about my Spitfire flight. Calm down, for God's sake, man. Man of your age, it's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, to be honest, I think it has this effect on most people. A gentleman who had a significant birthday, much bigger than mine, who was on first just before me, he was seemed quite nervous, and when he came down he was buzzing off the ceiling as well. It was quite funny. We had a great old time. It just shows how much fun these flights are. But anyway, the reason I'm back on again today, we're going to have a second pilot's briefing, debrief, number 2 for the pilot from Squadron Leader Oxley. I thought I'd share with you some of these new photos. Now we'll do a proper montage of them with all the other bits. I'm going to do this is something I might do at Christmas time. I'm going to do like a compilation, my epic Spitfire flight, big birthday Spitfire flight or something like that. And we'll do a big old compilation. We'll have a little bit of interspersed stills and video. But I thought I'd show you these brand new images which you will not have seen before, and I haven't seen before myself. So I'm going to zoom you in. All of these are my Spitfire flight, not the others. So I was absolutely amazed to see them. I think it was fortuitous that I was actually having a Spitfire flight with the sort of lunchtime slot, so to speak. Sorry, I'm just trying to get the screen in the right place. I had the lunchtime slot, so I was probably more likely to get photographed for that reason. And there was one photographer chap who my wife was saying that he was taking photographs and then he disappeared, and we think he took maybe took these because he was with the group watching, and then he went off somewhere around the other side of the airport at Blackpool on the 11th of October. So here we go. So this is me taxiing, getting ready, taxiing down the main runway at this point, which is a fairly long taxi, ready for takeoff. So I'm just going to very quickly flick you through them. So this is obviously the Mk.VIII trainer Spitfire. We have actually got a photo. I'll just zoom through with these because there's quite a few good ones. So that one we don't need to see. This one isn't me. I just make it quite clear, but it's a beautiful photo of the aircraft taken from a previous flight when they've had chase plane. But doesn't it look wonderful? Anyway, now we're going. All the rest of the pictures are me. So we're going to see. Look at this. This is just after wheels up. So I've just taken off, and you can see the airport buildings in the background. Full throttle here, going blasting down the runway, before he goes into this tremendous turn. And I particularly like this photograph, which I have to zoom back for you. This shows the Blackpool roller coaster at the Pleasure Beach, and us flying over. I can just improve that. It just needs a bit of brightness on this photo. There we go. That's a bit better. Just boost it slightly. That's better. So you can just see there that we're zooming over the funfair, and I have to be honest with you, I know which funfair ride I prefer, if I'm honest. Then we've got another shot of us flying low. This is actually between the two previous shots, I think, but another rather impressive bit of photography from the gentleman concerned. I just wonder if I can see my hand. Am I waving? I think if we zoom this in, my head is tilted away to the right, so this is just before that funfair shot, in fact, where I was waving to my wife, basically waving to my wife over. She probably couldn't see that. I'm pretty sure you can't see it even on the video, but I was in fact waving, which is why my head's turned away. And again, this one, I think this is just a moment or so early, so they're probably not in the right sequence, but it doesn't really matter. You get the idea. Whoops, no, we don't have to copy it. Just want to manipulate it a bit. There we go. And then, this is when we were taxiing, as I say, but so we've seen that twice. And this is the best shot of the lot, actually, because this is when we're actually taking off. So I've kind of shown them to you in reverse order. Is there another shot before this? No, there's another couple of shots. But this is actually the tail wheel coming up, so this is lifting off. So my wheel is now off the ground, but the pilot's he's still planted at the front there. Let's have a closer look with a bit of zoom. See what we can make out here. Whoops. Oh, Apple, go away. Stop being so annoying. Right, there we go. You can clearly see that is my good self. And then you got pilot John Cook just ahead of me at the controls. That moment, to be honest, that you're seeing there, that instant, is when we're on this rather wobbly, very uneven runway. It looks all fine in a still photo, but if you watch the video, you'll see very clearly that it's very uneven indeed. This is later in the flight. This is on final. It's got the flaps down, just coming into land. Quite a nice shot, to be honest. You can see it wasn't the best of days at Blackpool. It wasn't a bad day. It was just a bit dull, so it wasn't the best for photography, to be fair. There we go. How's that? Now that's a nice picture. This is doing this very tight left banking turn that I sort of complained about. Complain is too strong a word, but it just took me by surprise. This is straight after takeoff, and yeah, it was fairly dramatic. Anyway, enough of the photographs. I'll get them all put in the right sequence and we'll get a montage set up of those. Also, though, the other things I wanted to tell you about, which I completely forgot, was the goodies that they gave me at the end. I got like a goodie bag, including for your flight suit. I got myself an official MT818 badge. FlySpitfire.com. Check this out. Isn't that nice? To stitch onto my jacket. Perhaps I could. Perhaps I'll just stitch it onto this one. Should I hang it on there? Maybe. Tally-ho. There you go. Also, it's a bit harder to show you because it's a sticker, but I flew a Spitfire sticker with the aircraft. Yeah, in profile shot. For your car, put that on my Porsche. And then, one that I forgot to show you last time, as I say, my flight certificate, which is very nice. And it says, the first Spitfire, it gives you the history of the aircraft basically. It's currently the markings of 309 Fighter Squadron USAAF, 1942 Mark 9 aircraft. So it's not entirely accurate in the depiction, because it was a Mark 9. Now this is the Mark 8, which I sort of forgot to mention in my pilot's debriefing notes, which has the retracting tail wheel as per the Airfix kit, the 24 scale of course. But this aircraft has it, but they've locked it down at Biggin Hill. They've decided to leave it in the lock position just for reliability and safety reasons. You don't want that to fail, and it was early days for retracting rear tail wheels. And they said to me that the pilot John said it's actually just like it's little more than like a shopping trolley caster wheel the way it operates. It just flaps about, you know. It's not powered or anything. But isn't that a nice certificate? And it says, instead of saying passenger, because I flew the aircraft and took the controls twice, I'm the second pilot. I'm a Spitfire pilot. Yes, I am. When you meet me at Telford, you can kneel before me. Maybe I'm getting a bit carried away with this now. Okay, you could just call me squadron leader, or if you prefer, wing commander. You can see this has completely gone to my head, haven't you? Hasn't it, I should say. Right, anyway, what I really wanted to show you is this book. Don't take me too seriously. This book of the pilot's notes for Spitfire, Mark 9, Mark 9, Mark 11 or Mark 16, and it's got the Merlin, all the versions including the 266, which is the one that was pertinent for this aircraft. So it is pertinent, it does apply. Let's have a look. The Ministry of Supply, the Air Council. Oh, it tells you when to mark down any amendments. Here we go. Spitfire Mark 9, Mark 11, Mark 16. Tells you all about the fuel tanks. Oh, this is everything really. It's quite nice, isn't it, the way they've done this? Tells you about the fuel pumps, Bendix, Stromberg, carburetor. Has electric booster pumps, fuel contents gauges and pressure warning lights, oil system, etc. Oh my goodness, my goodness. Trim tabs, undercarriage controls. Tells you how to operate everything. Undercarriage indicator. Down, green light down. We talked about this in my flight, didn't we? Wheel brakes, goes into a lot of detail, doesn't it? Sliding hood controls, carburetor intakes. So these are all the things that are slightly different on this model to the previous ones. Fuel system management, my lord. Sorry, I've just realised I've got my gloves on. There's a reason I'm not allergic to anything. Just reason. Some people say, what on earth are you wearing gloves for today? Well, what you don't realise is I tend to make I make these videos. I don't make them one at a time, just on the spur of the moment, on the day concerned. And I'm in the middle of doing a load of reviews, so there we go. I just thought I'd explain that. Otherwise I'd take them off, but this is only a quick vid, and I'll be busy in a minute with those. Takeoff, here we go. Training normal loads. There is a tendency to swing to the left, but this can easily be checked with your rudder. Swing to the left, okay. That's torque. That's the torque of the engine. Wow. After retracting the undercarriage, it is essential to check that the red warning light comes on. Since if the undercarriage fails to lock in the up, the airflow through the radiators and the oil coolers will be much reduced and create excessive temperatures in your engine. Ooh, okay. Yeah, well, we didn't have any problem with that. Checklist, trim tabs, fuel pump. Gosh, I mean, to be honest, when I, as a passenger, if you will, on this plane, when I wasn't flying it myself, it was very slickly flown. In terms of the preparation, I thought we'd be, it wasn't like a Formula One car where they have to warm it up for hours and hours and hours before they can go anywhere. It seemed to be, I guess it was pretty much up to operating temperature already, but they seemed to have it ready. Just a few basic checks. They refueled it a couple of times. They refueled it just before I went up, and it's pretty much full tanks, which I think it was 38 gallons. Sticks in my mind. I think it has a maximum tank of 38 gallons. Not that much, is it really? Is that right? I thought that was odd, but anyway, that's what it showed on the instrument. Not as much as you might imagine, but yeah, it's got basically all the details about this variant and the things to watch out for. Undercarriage emergency controls, ditching. Here we go. Let's read this, shall we? Ditching. Speeds of at least. Trying to get the undercarriage flaps to. Hang on a minute. Let's just bear with me. Emergencies. Here we go. Failure of the pneumatic system. If the flaps fail to lower, and we heard the pneumatic system when I touched down, you could actually hear the system, the bleed valve, operate a big hiss of air, and then the flaps went back up. If the flaps fail to lower and the control is moved to the down position, it's probably due to a leak in the pipeline. If the leak develops in the flaps control system, the flaps will lower, but complete loss of air pressure will follow, and the brakes will become inoperative. Oh, great. Glad I didn't read any of this beforehand. Hood jettisoning. The hood can be jettisoned in emergency by pulling the rubber knob inside the top of the hub. There's a rubber knob, it's like a table tennis ball, but rubber. Yank it and it jettisons the whole canopy. Before jettisoning the hood, the seat should be lowered to keep the heat of the head well down. Too right. Forced landing. Gosh. What about bailing out? Does it say anything about bailing out? To really frighten us. Crowbar. Crowbar for use is stowed in the spring clips in the cockpit door in case the hood fails to jettison. You got your own crowbar. Incredible. A speed of at least 150 mile an hour, 130 knots should be maintained while manoeuvring to get the undercarriage and flaps retracted. With them retracted, okay. The flaps should not be lowered until it is certain that the selected landing area is within easy gliding reach. In other words, once you put them flaps down, you're kind of committed, aren't you? If oil pressure is still available, the glide can be lengthened. Ditching in the sea. Here we go. Whenever possible, the aircraft should be abandoned by parachute rather than ditched, since the ditching qualities are known to be very poor. In other words, it goes down like a stone. Any external stores should be jettisoned. The cockpit hood should be jettisoned. Flaps should be lowered in order to reduce the touchdown speed as much as possible. The undercarriage should be kept retracted, otherwise it'll just dig in, you see. Go straight down. Ditching should be along the swell, or into wind if the swell is not steep. But the pilot should be prepared for a tendency of the aircraft to dive when contacting the water. Oh, great. Gosh, scary stuff, isn't it? You've got to have your wits about you to fly these aircraft, there's no question about it. And it's got, what's this? Drop tank booster. Oh, there's some pictures here, let me zoom you in. Instrument panel, there you go, which in the back you had kind of a copy of, if you will. Oops. Here they are. Here's all the main instruments. Takes you back to my video with Keith, who explained them all for you. Explained it very, very well as well. Also gave you a perfect example of what the colour should look like, very accurately. Starboard side on the right here, port side on the left, obviously. Everything's there. Very good. Yep, very good that, excellent. Anyway, I thought I should show you that because I was given this all as part of the pack. Don't worry, they didn't sort of thrust this into my hand and said you better read this and make it quick because I was getting on board the aircraft. They gave this to me afterwards. They should have sent this to me first. When you pay your money, they should really send you that, shouldn't they? Maybe not though, because I think it might just put you off a little bit. Anyway, there we go. So that's the Spit. You saw some more photographs that were new photos of my flight, which is incredible. That's it really. I think that's probably covered the subject and we can close the book on it really. And excuse me, I think it's to say it was enjoyable and memorable would be one of the greatest understatements. And I say again the joke, as I mentioned to somebody else, that it really is, if you're an aircraft enthusiast and you like Spitfires, it really is the most fun that you're going to have with your clothes on. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Hope you thought that was interesting. Little glance at a few interesting items that they gave me. So I've got my t-shirt as well, which is just over here, which I'll just produce quickly before I go. Just to remind you, you can buy these for all the different versions of the Spits that they run, from Fly Spitfire. If you've been up in the Grey Nurse, you can get the Grey Nurse version. So don't miss out on getting yourself a nice t-shirt. Even if you can't afford the Spitfire ride, why don't you get yourself a nice t-shirt? Or one of the models. And if you want the model of the aircraft, remember the closest probably is the new Airfix 48 scale TR9 trainer. But it is a Mark 8, so this is where it gets complicated. Obviously the 24 scale Airfix Mark 8 that has the grey nurse scheme on it, on the artwork. Nice bit of artwork as well. Adam Tooby, I think. That is the closest aircraft, but it's not a trainer, of course. It's not a converted version. So really, the closest is the TR9. So I'd go for that one if you want to get yourself a model of it. So maybe I shall have a way with Airfix or invest in one of those in the not too distant future. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you found it all very interesting, and don't forget to get yourself a poppy. By the way, we're coming up to Remembrance Day in a few weeks. Just give a quick plug for the Royal British Legion. Need all your support these days. I think they find it a little bit difficult now because people don't carry cash, so people often don't pay. You know, you go to the Co-op or your local Sainsbury's or whatever, Tesco. You know, there's a collection tin there, and a lot of us are not carrying cash. So do think about these guys. They need your support. Hope you'll maybe make a small donation and get yourself a poppy, or get your car park change out and pop some in the tin. Anyway, thank you for watching. Until next time, don't forget to give us a like, and don't forget to subscribe and ding the notification bell and click the all option, not personalised, which is anything but. And I hope to see you in the very near future. Till then, thanks for watching, take care of yourselves, and bye for now.